Okay, I'm Jose Rodriguez. I'm from Venezuela. You might know me for workshops like 2.0. I'm here to talk to you about a plugin I had an idea for at the beginning of this year. The idea was born in New York during some CakePHP meetups there. Some people were asking me, hey, is 2.0 going to return objects in models? And they say yes, but no. The reason that I said that is we were not ready to do it. It's a lot of work inside the core. It's a lot more stuff for the users to migrate when passing from 1.3 to 2.0. So I thought that I could somehow support or offer a solution for people wanting to get objects returned in queries. So that's how my Mongo plugin was born, with CakePHP 2.0 using MongoDB with the help of Doctrine. And this is sponsored by CakeDC. So why choose CakePHP? Well, we all know that it's slow as hell, and it has PHP support. This is very important. And why are you even here in CakeFest? So if that's what makes CakePHP, why are you even here? So we all know this isn't true. We have proof that CakePHP is not as slow as we thought. Actually, 2.0 is at least 30% faster than 1.3. We have already dropped PHP 4 support, and we're all here at CakeFest. This proves that the project is alive, and we're moving on. So seriously, I like CakePHP because it has easy-to-follow conventions. It's super flexible. It's pragmatic. I just want to make web pages and drop the files and then kind of start making them. And it has a good set of tools, classes, and APIs that I can use for wherever I like. So for me, there's always a but and a yes but no. What's the problem with CakePHP? The first one for me is that it has a Frankenstein-like implementation of active record. A model, if you think about it, can be a table and a record at the same time, because it has a data property where you put the fields for a record, and it has properties like save and read that are at record level. But it also has methods like update all, delete all, find. Those are table level operations. So it's kind of a little monster that starts growing slower but at a steady pace. And we're already at 2.0, and we were not able to get rid of it and bring another solution. So the second problem for me is callbacks are not firing in associations. So has anyone tried to translate associations? Yeah, it's a nightmare. So the problem is not that it's not technically possible. Historically, this feature has not been supported because it costs a great deal in performance calling the associations the way we have implemented the DBO source. And of course, models are still returning arrays. Some people would argue with me that arrays are great for returning results. Can you raise your hand who thinks that? Okay, that's one, and it's totally a valid point. Arrays are great because PHP has like 10,000 array operations, so arrays are great. But arrays don't represent the data they are trying to represent. If I ask a user to get results from a database, for instance, get me the A instructor, the array returned doesn't represent its structure. It represents a set of data that is loosely coupled under the umbrella of an idea that it is an instructor, but it isn't. So what happened with arrays is that actually they are not encouraging users to have fat models. I get arrays from the database, I operate on them on the controllers or operate on them on models, on views, and that's how I build my CakePHP applications. So people that has a more advanced knowledge or experience in CakePHP knows that all these array operations should be put into the model, not into controller, not into views, but into model. But the biggest problem happened when, how do I treat this array? Is this, should I always receive the ID for an operation? Should I receive an array representing the object or the idea, the row? That's hard to decide, actually. So I had a faint memory of when I studied computer science and said, well, what do I need to do to get this working? So objects should be cohesive and decoupled from each other. We have lots of models in CakePHP, most applications I've seen that do operations not only for the model they represent, but for other models, because the way associations are done in CakePHP kind of makes you make all operations for all models in one single method in one class. That's not good for what I've been taught in my university. So I kind of remembered, well, I should have objects that represent what they are and should do only what they do, what they should do. So this is what I wanted. Is anyone familiar with Java? Yeah, that's for Java guys, that's for you to laugh, because that's kind of a very famous book for studying in university. And I always have make fun of that guy. So seriously, where is it? Well, out of jokes, what we have here is what Hibernate from Java does for mapping records to objects in Java. Ideally, you create a model using UML, so you draw your application. Then you create your objects that represent everything, a user, an instructor, a course. Then you add another layer that will make those objects be persisted in the database. But that was not quite what I wanted. I don't want to switch Java. I don't want to be Symfony. So what I really wanted was only the popos. That's plain old PHP objects. I want a post to represent a post. It has an author, title, content, and another author. Has the first name, last name, username, password, etc. And it has operations for each user, for each post. For instance, if I want to set the contents of the post, I can do other operations on it, like escape the content. I would not have to do it in the view or in a behavior or whatever. I can do it in the class it represents. So to get the full name, how do you do it in CakePHP currently? Hands? Yep. After find, yes. Or virtual fields. You would do this usually using after find or virtual field. So if you use virtual fields, you're putting more work into the database, even if you're not sure that you will need the full name on the view or the controller or wherever you want to use it. And if you do it in after find, you will internally cry, because after find returns everything like 100 times. So I need to check if one record is all records, it's associated record, and I have to iterate for each one just to set perhaps only one. So what I really wanted was a class representing the thing. But what I really wanted to was to make them persist automatically without me having to do any work additionally from just set the values and they're saved. So let's move on to another topic. Why did I choose Doctrine? I know Doctrine is a very mature data abstraction layer, and it's kind of establishing as a de facto persistent library in PHP. That might not be true, what I'm saying. There's tons and tons of persistent libraries and implementations of active record for PHP in GitHub, but I think this is kind of one of the most famous ones. What I really liked about Doctrine is that it doesn't impose you anything on your objects. They are just plain objects. They don't have to extend a class or have an interface or implement any method. They're just objects. It will store those objects no matter what they are. And it also has support for callbacks, dynamic queries, and it loads the results in associations in a lazy manner. So actually my personal reasons for choosing Doctrine are that I didn't want to write another ORM or ODM. An ODM is an object document manager because it's very hard and it's really would really consume my time. I already spent like 1 month migrating all drivers to use PDO in CakePHP, and I know the huge effort it takes to write an ORM. So it's already done. Why should I do it again? There's like tons of projects already set in GitHub. Why should I have mine? And as it potentially could take any type of object to be saved, I thought it could stay out of my way to implement what I wanted in CakePHP. So what was my original idea when I started? I will use Doctrine to support models returning objects in CakePHP as a plugin for 2.0, so people can start using models returning objects, and people will love me. And I wanted to conquer the world, of course. The problem was the relational database management systems. This world is too broad. There's too many options, too many drivers, too many things to query data. So what I wanted was, I need restrictions for this. I want to implement something simple that works and then extend my idea. That's how I chose Mongo. So why Mongo? Because it has a smaller set of actions that would allow me to implement all the features I wanted for CakePHP faster. The second reason that is actually not my preference is that the schema is created in the class and not directly in Mongo. If you are familiar with MongoDB, you know that MongoDB is schema free. So whatever you put into it, it will save it. So it's really different from the way we create database in CakePHP. We first go to phpMyAdmin or whatever the tool you use is, and create your schema, your tables, the length, etc. It's really different from what you use in Mongo. So the way that this would work for me is that I will define my schema in a class, would say, yeah, my properties are, because this object represents this, the properties are first name, last name, username, password, etc. So it's like having a faster fixture schema. When you create fixtures, that's what you do. You create a giant array of fields and giant array of records. It's kind of the same thing, but these records or properties are just PHP class properties. And of course, it's a common conference buzzword. Everybody loves Mongo. It's fast, it's super, it's whatever. So I thought that would make a good presentation for CakePHP. So, of course, they say it's fast. I'm not sure, actually. It's something that's between NoSQL and relational. And that I liked, because I really liked relational database systems. And it has some sort of operation that simulates SQL. And it has indices. Indices are great. I can optimize my queries in a way that I already know, because I do know SQL databases. And a feature I really like is it has embedded documents. I don't have to define has and belongs to many. Can you please raise your hands who likes has and belongs to many? No one? Do you like has and belongs to many? No? Nobody can like it. It's horrible. So I really liked having embedded documents. I don't have to set up joins for things that should stay in the same object. Like if you have a product and the product has different characteristics, like the colors and the size and the price, you can set them all there. You don't have an external table to represent those. And it's okay for typical CRUD stuff. So that's what would limit my scope for implementing this plugin. How does Doctrine and MongoDB works? The good thing is that it's really natural. As the schema is free, you can create it on the fly as you like. One object, one PHP object corresponds to one document in Mongo. So documents consist of properties, and Mongo documents consist in properties too. And the good thing is that PHP objects has accessors for those. I don't have to use arrays. And you can nest objects in PHP, and you can nest objects in Mongo too. So it kind of fits. So this is an example of how Doctrine and Mongo relates. Is that readable? Not so much? Okay. You define a class and you annotate with as a comment on the code that this represents a document using a collection. And for each field, I define what type of field it will represent. We have the ID and a string, a binary data, and relationships too. And I also have a public method for getting the ID. So you can also reference other documents using properties on your objects. So if I wanted an embedded document, I just use the embedded document property, and I can still define my own properties for it, have a constructor, custom constructor. I can say new phone number with my phone number and save it to the Mongo database. One thing that Doctrine says that you should do is make all your properties private. That's not quite true. You can make it public if you like and not have access for it. But what I really wanted after seeing this, Doctrine plus Mongo, is people is used to access data using arrays. I also want that. Another thing about MongoDB and Doctrine is that the queries are done through a repository object. That makes sense for me. I have something that represents a table and something that represents an object. And the queries, if you look at them, they're somewhat similar to what we have in CakePHP. And it also has, as in CakePHP, some magic methods to map some to properties and finds. if you look at this is very symphony. It's like I have a repository object and I initialize it and then creates lots of options. That's too verbose. I want a lazier way. I want something faster. So Doctrine does have lazy queries. I can create a query for a user and set the field using a range, unlimited. I can create it using equals. I can use the dot notation for it. If I have nested documents, I can use dot notation to access those nested properties. I can reference. I can get results, get one result. So the queries are created using a builder. The options are passed similarly to CakePHP, where we have array, field, value. In this case, is method, field, method, value. Doing this will not issue an actual query to Mongo. It's just a query, and when you are ready to get the first result, you will have it. And as I told you, I know people are used to creating queries with arrays. I needed that too. So this is my plan. I will map object property to accessors. So no matter if your property is protected or private, you will get it. I will implement the good old CakePHP array access. So if you want user, sub, username, you'll get it too. And I want a way to describe associations as that are not too different from Cake. And I want CakePHP finders. I want you to use arrays for finding. So this is what I wanted to look it like. I want to create a document called user, have private username, and then access the username just like that, and set the username just like that. And it magically would map to the set and get methods if they are defined. Any questions? So accessing the property will automatically call set or get for that property if it exists. So I also plan to use array access if I have the same class and I access it using user sub username and I set the property, it should save. And it can also be used, should be used to set associated properties. If I set post sub author sub username, it should work too. So I wanted to use associations. Instead of reference one, reference many, I wanted CakePHP word like has one embedded, has many, has and belongs to. Okay? And I planned to use this. If I find all users with conditions and have some sort of SQL support with it where I set an operator and it maps to an operator in MongoDB. Okay. So more items in my plan. I wanted to support the model callbacks, the same style of validation. I didn't want to change at all the form helper. I wanted it to work, just pass an object and make it pre-populate the form, get the form data and make it safe. I wanted to paginate. I wanted to use an object from Mongo as my user that's authenticated in my system. And I loved namescope. Does anyone use Ruby on Rails here? Are you familiar with namescopes? Okay, I wanted that. So, cooking my plan. This picture was actually taken on Seattle, working on the SQL server. We won, I think best menu, but Graham beat us in best food.
I'm a good chef, I'm a good cook.
Yeah, he is. Okay, this is kind of big. So a document in CakePHP plus Doctrine plus Mongo. You first need to import Cake document and use it as your base class for all your documents. You still need to annotate your class using the Doctrine annotations and annotate each property equally. So you might see that I have some properties as private and some properties public. Setting properties as protected or private helps you build additional logic around them, such as validation or sanitization of the inputs or whatever you like to do. So it's not mandatory to declare them as protected or private. You can do as you want, but if you want additional logic around them, you should use the protected accessor. And the private property should always stay private. Sorry. So how do I define associations? I just use the common words on CakePHP, has one, has many, and belongs to. If I want to embed a document into another document, I append a suffix to these keywords. I call them has one embedded, has many embedded. Okay? As you can see, you can also define an alias for the class. This is used on the form helper and the array access. If you do object sub alias sub property, it will map to this property and get the sub property on that object. If you want to define more complex associations, like having limit conditions cascade on your associations, just check the documentation on Doctrine. So how do I get associated data using this plugin? I just find a user, I can iterate the phone number. The phone number is actually another document. And I can print the property called number on this phone number. And I can do the same for office address in the object that I defined previously. I can iterate all office addresses and then print each property separately. And I don't have to make a distinction between if it's embedded or not. It will fetch any association that you define on your documents. So it's completely transparent. You can also define toString and just echo an object, and it will print whatever you have in your toString method. So how do I find? So what was implemented was I have a static find method that's very similar to what CakePHP currently does. You call a name of a finder, some conditions with an order, with limit, offset, the fields, and any other key you can pass to CakePHP models currently. I think it's supported. I'm not 100% sure, but most of them were implemented. You can also use the normal operators like greater than, equals, different, not in. But if you want to use the Doctrine API, you still have access to it. You can use users find all and still have access to the Doctrine API. So the finders are lazy. Every time you use find all, it's actually not going to fetch data from Mongo. You can still query it until you first access the first result. And what's cool about it is that after fetching the results, you can still keep asking it different conditions to it and iterate it again. So you can also define custom finders. So who's familiar with find methods in CakePHP? So you already know that defining a find method as recent true would call find recent, isn't it? So find recent is same as in 1.3 where you have two states. I did it just because people know how it works, so I kept on the same pattern. So you have a status before where you can change the query and a status after where you can change the results. But the cool thing about it is that it always receives the same query. It actually doesn't receive results at all. It receives queries and another query, and you can stack them over and over. And the other way of creating a finder is having it defined statically in the class. So you can find, in this example, lesser paid and pass conditions to it like you do using find. So the examples are there. I use user find, user top paid, lesser paid, top paid recent, or recent lesser paid. I can stack as many finders as I want, and they will still not find any data until I access the first result. And I can also pass custom params to my finders. Like there, I have user lesser paid recent 5. And the number 5 will get passed as a third argument in my find function. The difference is that those properties are static and the find methods are static too. That's the difference with 1.3. So how do I save my data? If you read this, this is not different from what you do right now in CakePHP. You have an array that is aliased by the model name. You call create, then save, but the difference is that you need to call flush. That's important. Data will not get saved to the database or to the persistent storage until you hit flush. You can also save creating a new user, assigning the properties directly using the properties, hitting save, and then flush. And one important thing about this is that save is always save all in this plugin. If I attach multiple nested objects to it, no matter if they are embedded or not, they will all get saved when I hit flush. You can set array data using the associations I told you when defining. The alias is used like in func number. That's how this plugin maps an alias to a property on the object. So again, don't forget to flush. And doing once per request is enough. Doing it more will hurt performance. So you will feel almost like home. Validation is just the same. You have almost all the callbacks you have in 1.3, like before validate, before save, after save, before delete, after delete. What's missing?
Forward after time.
Right. I purposely let them out because finders already have their own way to filter before and after. If you like my plugin and you start sending me pull requests, I might reconsider if you have a good use case for it, but for the moment they're out. As in normal CakePHP models, created and modified columns are populated, and it works like a charm with a form helper. You don't have to do anything. Can anyone spot the difference between a normal action in CakePHP and this?
Flush.
Flush. That's it. It works the same. You don't have to do anything on your controllers. So pagination. Pagination is really cool, but at the same time I had to create my own paginator. So good thing is that CakePHP 2.0 lets you alias paginators. So to paginate Mongo objects, just use the class MongoCake.documentPaginator. It just works the same, but better, because you can stack finders after paginating. So I can paginate recent, paginate top paid, paginate lesser paid recent, and so on. So you just need to iterate your results as you're used to. For each user, do this. So for authentication, you have to use the MongoCake document auth class. Basically, if you need to know why I had to do this, it's because it's not a good thing to store objects in the session. Or at least it was not good for me. It was really hard to do. So on the other side, the good thing is that auth user will return the object. It doesn't return an array. So if you want to save an author for an article, just call auth user, and that's the user object. And Doctrine will understand this and save it. Okay, do we have time for a quick demo? What time is it?
2:26.
I have time to.
I think so.
Do you have any questions so far? Yes.
How did you implement the array stuff, or is that too complicated to go into?
How do I?
How did you implement the regular CakePHP array access?
You want to get into details? Okay. I'm going to change the colors here so you can see better. Okay, basically, you do it using array access. So array access takes, I think it's 5 methods that are magically called when you use the array notation in an object.
Is that from the SPL?
That's from SPL, actually, yes. Those methods are called offset access, offset get, and offset set. I think it's actually another one is called offset unset. Any other question? Yeah.
So you got rid of has it belongs to many, which is awesome. But I guess the question I have, so you used as an example, listing the color of a product.
Yep.
What if I wanted to say, find me all products that are red?
There are. Sorry.
What if you wanted
Red,
to say,
red.
find me all products that are red?
Okay. You have 2 options. If you use has and belongs to many like document objects, you would have something like a document called option being embedded. The option would take 2 properties, the option name and the option value. It's like having a JSON object where thing equals another thing. Well, Mongo allows you to define indices on those objects. So to just, let me go to the presentation. In Finders, you can use option.color red. And that's it. But you need an index on it because it will be really slow if you don't. Sorry. Any other question? Yeah.
With that same example going one step further, how would you then what all of the get a list of all of the colours that are in the database?
You have multiple options to do this. You can use MapReduce. So you have define a JavaScript operation on your database. Actually, Doctrine makes you make it on the fly and MapReduce all the colors.
Would you have a model for the colour to do that, or would you do that within the...
You could have, no, that wouldn't make any sense. I would use a embedded document for options, unless you have thousands of colors with different properties for each color, like RGBA plus, I don't know. Yeah, I would make an embedded object for it, but I don't think that's a real use case. Any other question? Okay. Is anyone here that attended to my workshop? Please raise your hand. Did you remember the topic of our application?
Yeah.
It was a training application. So I did the same application using MongoCake. And the classes that resulted in model were the attendee, the classroom, instructor, student, and user. I want to take a look at Attendee because it's really special. The Attendee, as I told you, needs to extend Cake document, but it's mapped as a superclass. So no one is allowed to instantiate this class because it's something that represents in an abstract attendee. So what's an attendee? It's actually an instructor, just extends attendee, and a student that extends attendee. And it's super cool that Doctrine knows this and fetches the common properties for each object. So a classroom would consist, a difference from 1.3 is that you need to app uses all your associations at the beginning. Otherwise, it won't work. So I have some properties. I map it as DOM, ID, string, integer, datetime, integer, float. This is my first association. It has many embedded. I have many students. And I define the target document for it. And I have many structures also with the target document. Attendee has also an association to user. It belongs to. And the user has multiple things, but the cool thing is that I defined the password as private because I want my password to be hashed when it's saved. So it's kind of like a before save, but it's better. So how does my controllers look like? Let's see the classroom controller. I'm using the static notation here because I think it's cleaner. It represents what it is. It's a table or a collection. I find the classroom. If it's false or null, didn't find it, and set it to the view. For adding it, this is no different from what you already know. Same thing for edit. I first find it, I get it, I save the request data to it, flush, that's it. Same thing for delete. Let's take a look at enroll. I find the classroom, I call classroom enroll the user. Flush, and then redirect. Let's take a look at how I implemented enroll. It's just this. If I can enroll, then I create a new student, set the students as a new key on this array, and return true. And if I can enroll if the user is not already in the array of users that are already on the course. Let's take a look at the views. Do you think views are going to be too different from normal CakePHP 1.3 ones? Raise your hand. Can you bet? Let's take a look at login. Find the difference? No difference. Let's take a look at index. Any difference? No, I actually just cake bake it. It did create the views with the correct schema, but it's still creating this. I can replace it for this if I want. And instead of using username role, I can use just a property accessor. But they all work, so no need to it right now. The only thing that's left to be shown, I think, it's the configuration in the database. It's just this. Just define the data source and the database name, and you're done. I think that's it. If you want to see it in action, I have created the users. And the only thing that it's worth seeing here is that I kind of implemented a logger for it. It's not the coolest thing in the world, but it at least shows you what's being done on the background. Yeah.
In the models, there we got quite a bit of code that's actually in the comments. So what do you do for testing? Because there's no big pass errors and stuff if the comments are wrong, but all your first thing right.
Sorry, in my model, what model?
Or like in the data objects that you're showing us now.
Here?
Yeah, where you're setting that stuff in the comments.
Oh, you see the cake document.
Yeah.
Oh, this is because this is the first project I do comments for. I'm really proud of it. I took the example of Mark's story that spends a lot of time documenting and putting samples in the API.
Not that where you're setting properties and stuff in the document.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's take a look at Classroom. Classroom. Yeah, things like this.
Yeah, like how do you, like obviously you're going to have to use a lot of reflection for testing.
No, actually no. They're just objects. Treat it like them. You just need to assert that if I put these properties in an object, I call save on it, and I find it again, the properties will be set. That's all you need to do. You can actually use the same unit testing that you do now because the array access is the same. If you want to take a look at my own unit testing for MongoCake, it's not here. This is my actual testing. I will test set with associations. I get data, user, account, address. I set the data, and I set equals that the data was set. That's it. Actually, the unit testing makes more sense, and it's kind of easier to do. It's not different because if I have phone numbers, that would be like user phone number, sub-zero, etc. That's the same thing you do now. Any other question?
Yep. Are your created and modified dates returned as date objects?
They are, yes. Let me show you a view for user.
Is that a Doctrine thing or? Is that
It was my personal choice, actually. If you define them as date, they will get saved. If they are not date object, in the comments, user. If they are not defined like this, sorry. The magic happens here, actually. Yep.
and you upload that to GitHub?
Oh, it's already in GitHub since like 4 months ago, but it's kind of ghetto. Well, it was. I was waiting to announce it here in CakeFest. It's in GitHub, Lorenzo, MongoCake.
Oh, I mean your restrictor example?
Yeah, I will. You can look at my test cases. It's really lengthy, so you will get plenty of examples of how to use it.
What about Doctrine? Do you just ship that as a, I don't know?
It's a submodule. Just clone the repo, use git submodule update. And it's recursive because it's like 10,000 repos inside. It's crazy, yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you.